All right. Thanks for tuning in to the Sheet Metal Shaping podcast, where we discuss traditional coach building techniques and the pursuit of sheet metal education. We got my man, Karl Fisher, on the show, YouTube superstar. What's up, buddy?
What's up? How's it going, Ryan?
Hey, fellow Canadian. I like that.
So good. So good.
Thanks for being here. This is a ton of fun. Tell the folks a bit about yourself.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on. I'm Karl Fisher. I started Japhands Kustoms 2014. So yeah, it's been about 9 years, and it's started off as just like a restoration shop, customized shop. We do chop tops, we do chassis, suspensions, air ride, hydraulics, like all kinds of custom work. And then it started slowly morphing into a YouTube channel. So I mean, here we are today. We're two years into the YouTube channel, and people seem to really enjoy it. I really enjoy it, and I think that's like the foreseeable future right now. Is just kind of perpetuating the exploration and experience of metal shaping, I guess.
I love it. Did the
Yeah.
YouTube channel just come by by accident, or like how did the business evolve into YouTube?
Well, it's kind of weird because like I'd always been thinking about YouTube, since I'd started the business. I'd always admired YouTubers and people that have been able to make their way by making videos and teaching people how to do different things. Like I learn a lot from YouTube. I watch a lot of channels. I don't watch so many right now, but whenever I have a question on working on any car or any bit of metal work, if there's something I don't know, I go to YouTube for it. So I always really liked it, and I've always been a really shy person. Somebody who like I can't really get up in front of crowds. Like I don't like all eyes on me or anything like that. But I started to make little videos of the work that we had going on in the shop to kind of help promote the business as well when it was a restoration shop. And I just started getting a little bit more comfortable with the camera and Instagram, and I started kind of putting little tips and tricks out on Instagram, and basically got a lot of good feedback of just the little tips and tricks, and people would actually comment like, you should put this on YouTube, and so we did literally that. Like at the time, like my wife was working kind of the front desk, and she started to try to pick up that stuff and taking some of the videos that we had made for Instagram and putting them on YouTube, and it just kind of, the ball started rolling from there, and we just kind of haven't looked back.
Love it. So has your model pretty much flipped on its head? So now you're primarily geared for YouTube production versus where before it was like a byproduct of?
Yeah, exactly. Now that YouTube has kind of like picked us up and said, you're gonna do okay on here, then sort of focused a little bit more on the potential and the opportunities that come from doing YouTube, and the joy that comes from doing YouTube. So I I've never really been like the kind of person who's just out to make money. Like if you look at
Mm.
my bank account, you'll know that I'm telling the truth. So I just want to have a fun life, and give out as much information as I can on what I'm passionate about, which is metalworking. So yeah, it's totally flipped on its head, and because of the potential that YouTube has shown, I'm just I'm just in it for that now. It's just so much more enjoyable way to spend my days, is just like I get to talk to you, or I get to have a class of 10 guys that are all like really into the exact same stuff, and like
Yeah.
it's just yeah, it's got a lot more reach now, so I'm enjoying it, and that's, yeah,
Where did you
that's
acquire the skills to make this happen?
I mean, like, I don't really know specifically. It's kind of been like a lifelong passion. I've always been really interested in and like admired people that could make things with their hands and turn junk into cool stuff, like, and I grew up like without money, and we'd always be like taking apart our bicycles and just Frankensteining whatever junk we could find into like
Yeah.
toys, basically, like mini bikes and go-karts and that sort of thing. And it really helped. Like I had my brother and a couple good friends that were like into the same sort of deal as
Yeah.
kids, and we've all kind of grown up to stick with that type of stuff, whether it be like a um actual jobs, or if it's just kind of like passion on the side. Like we all just love building stuff and talking about building stuff and thinking about building stuff, so that's kind of like where it comes from, is just like the want to learn is where that comes from, because you'll pick it up in all different places, right? Like you're not just
Yeah.
going to learn specifically, go here and learn this. It's like you have to have a mindset of wanting to absorb that knowledge, and then you'll pick it up from everybody you talk to that has something to do with it. So, but specifically, I would say a large turning point for me was working with Christian Sosa
Mm.
Metalworks. I took his class in 2018. We worked together briefly on a motorcycle, or a couple motorcycles,
Mhm.
in 2014. But I took his class in 2018, and just being in his shop and watching him make shapes with a power hammer, and having it explain to me what is truly happening to the metal when this is happening, that's what really sunk in for me. So that's kind of like, I think, one of the big differences in teaching styles for people is some people learn by seeing, some people learn by doing, some people learn by listening. For me, I have to know what is actually happening on like the most basic level. So like
Mm.
you
Yeah.
can show me a power hammer and say, when you stick it into thumbnail dies and pull it back out, it shrinks. But like, why is it doing that?
How? Yeah.
How is it doing that?
Yeah.
Well, it creates this wrinkle, and then it forces the wrinkle together so the metal actually gets thicker. Then I get it.
Hmm.
So for me, that his class was a turning point, and it helped kind of solidify my not solidify, but it just helped me understand more about the properties of metal and how these machines are affecting it, or these hand tools are affecting it. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say turning point for sure.
Do you think that you've taught yourself more than others have taught you, or do you think that it's the other way around, or even?
I mean, it's kind of hard to put that on it, because like you have to be willing to learn for someone to teach as well. So like I wouldn't say I've taught myself anything really, because you've picked it up from somewhere. And certainly, like, I've picked up knowledge by, oh, all of a sudden you learned this thing while you were trying to do something. But for the most part, it's like it's just seeing that people have done it, seeing that people are doing it, and listening to the people that I expect know what they're talking about. And that's like where I probably learn the most. And then actually doing it myself and trying it, I guess that's where I'm teaching myself, I guess, by doing it. But for the most part, just learning about like what a machine does and how it works, and how Mike Wagner is using it to do this, or how like Aiden Hunt is coach building this, like seeing that it's possible, and seeing them using the tools, that is kind of learning in itself for me
Yeah.
anyway. But just knowing that it's possible, um and then those real moments of actual solid learning when you're experiencing it like in real life, that's, I guess, where I'm teaching myself, you know what I mean?
Mm.
But it all comes from the knowledge that other people have walked before us, right?
Let's get into some of that knowledge. So you got the power hammer guys, you get the English wheel guys, right?
Yeah.
I talked about this with Aiden on an episode, and I also talked about this with Mike. And I said, like, there's always this great divide. Some people are saying, oh, I only use the wheel, and some people say I only use the hammer, and all of this. Let's talk about those two machines and maybe why there's such a divide.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know like what the where the huge divide comes from, but for me, I mean, I don't consider myself to have enough experience with all the different traditional metal shaping ways to really divide them. Because like, yeah, like, in Europe, like, there's probably a lot more English wheel or wheeling machine. They're not calling it an English wheel, right? you know, and a lot of people are bringing huge shapes out of Jaguar type fenders, and whatever, with just only the English wheel. Then they're not blocking it. They're not power hammering. They're not doing
Mhm.
anything else. And that's a certain technique and a certain tradition. And then there's other guys like Aiden, who I like Aiden's approach a lot, because from what I can see, he's using multiple styles. Maybe it's a little
Yeah,
bit more Italian or
yeah,
something, because he's doing a lot of blocking, but he's doing it out of efficiency with the tools that he has available, right? So
yeah.
like he's quite efficient with making a shape. Like he'll bring up a huge fender for for his boat tail project, and he'll shrink the edges really fast,
Mhm.
block the center, and he's mostly using the English wheel to planish. He's not
Mm.
really bringing as much shape as I would assume with the
Yeah.
English wheel, unless it's a shallow shape. Like if he's going to do a door skin, he's using only the English wheel, right? And which makes sense. You're not going to put big
Yeah.
tucks into the side of that; it's too much. But creating like a large, huge fender, he's using everything at his disposal to be the most efficient for what he's trying to make.
Mhm.
And I respect that a lot. I think it takes a lot more critical thinking as to you know figuring out on your own without outside influence or without past influence with
Yeah.
these machines that I have now, what is the most efficient way to make this shape? And so I really like his approach that way. I haven't seen a whole lot of other people like in front of my eyes doing work like that, but judging by just looking at the panels on his Auburn, I didn't see him make the fender, but I could tell by looking at the panel that here's all the blocking marks,
Mhm.
here's all the shrinking tucks, and so that was, obviously a really efficient way to make that, heavy block, stretching the center, bringing that up, and then tucking the edges to bring that in. I mean, you're making a huge shape really fast if you've got that equipment at your disposal, but he's still hand blocking it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like there's no rules, and that's why I kind of like it. Is you could literally do everything with a hammer and a stump if you wanted to, and you have the time. Like
Yeah.
a shaped piece of steel to planish with, and a bowl inside a stump. You could probably make just about anything, but it's whether or not that's the efficient way to do it if you have other tools at your disposal, right?
Yeah. What do you prefer to use in your shop?
For me, I'm kind of all over the place. Like I like the power hammer whenever I can. Like if I
Yeah.
have to do some heavy shrinks, it's the easiest way to do it for sure. But I do kind of use everything. I use a sandbag. I use blocking hammers. I use, the English wheel. But yeah, I'm kind of all over the place to be honest. Like I'm a little bit green as far as like how many panels I've made. To be honest, like I'm still kind of in my infancy of metal shaping because like guys that have been doing it for 40 years, like I got a long way to go. you know, like I've been seriously doing it since like 2018. So what is that, like 5 years?
Yeah.
And still not like shaping daily or doing any of that, but certainly learning daily. Like
Yeah.
I'm always working on it and developing the tools for it as well at the same time. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have like a full on style yet, but shallow shapes, I'm pretty much just English wheeling, and anything heavier than that, I'm sandbagging to stretch and block, and then shrinking on the edge.
You had mentioned Christian Sosa, and you mentioned Aiden as well. Who else do you like to learn from?
I mean, yeah, Christian Sosa, Aiden, Mike, like I'm blown away by like Mike's 3D paper patterning and his
Mm.
just paper patterning, how accurate he is as far as making templates and radius gauges to check. Like he is surgical. So I feel like there's like extremes. There's kind of like, I went to Aiden's shop and he showed me his paper patterns, and they're like, here's this crumpled up piece of paper with like some Sharpie lines on it, and there's
Yeah.
a beautiful Auburn over there. Like, it's like a lot of it's in his head. And like where Mike is very surgical, he makes exact little pieces for everything, as whereas Aiden's a little bit more flowy. He kind of lets the shape guide itself a little bit here and there.
Mm.
But yeah, there's definitely lots of guys like not even just specifically metal shaping, but in the ways that they cut up cars as well. As I watch like the Menzies twins speed shop. They're
Mhm.
on they're on Instagram, and they do a lot of Zephyr conversions, and that's just directly in alignment with what I'm trying to do with mine.
Yeah.
And just seeing how they cut the car to um, to make each panel, it makes sense to me. Like I'll give an example. His when he does a quarter on a 4-door to 2-door conversion on a Zephyr, he doesn't just make the piece um, that the door is missing from. And I found out why, because I tried to do that. I just tried to make only the piece that the door was missing on it, and the body line was just kind of short like this. Whereas I
Mhm.
saw on his, he made a really long body line, and I didn't really realize why until I made my panel and I put the short body line in it, that the four-door has a slightly different arc in the body line, so it kind of peaked up there and it looked wrong. And I
Ah,
was like, oh, well, that's why.
ah,
So, like there's, I try and watch everybody I can. So like
yeah.
specifically, I don't really know. Like I've seen stuff that Bobby Walden does, and then I'm like, oh man, that's cool. I've seen stuff that Ray Chalene does, and I'm like, yeah, well that makes sense there, or Ron Covell or Faye Butler. Like there's just so many of them, right? Like there's
Mhm.
yeah, I pretty much I'll absorb knowledge from just looking at someone's picture on Instagram.
Yeah, yeah.
If I see something there that makes sense to me, then that's that's where I'll take a little bit from, right? So yeah.
Let's talk about your Zephyr. What's going on there?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
The Zephyr is 1939 Lincoln Zephyr. It's one that I acquired it, I think like maybe 4 years ago, 3, 4 years ago. Is a car I never thought that I'd be able to attain. Like I've just like silently been admiring this car as like one of my favorite cars. Even like my friends were like, "Whoa, like you bought a Zephyr? Like since when was that your dream car?" I was like, guys, like it's kind of one of those unobtainium dream cars for me. So I didn't even want to vocalize it because it doesn't honestly doesn't seem like it's something I could do.
Wow. Where did you
And
acquire it?
so it was in British Columbia
Okay.
on Vancouver Island, and it's a wild story, man. Like it popped up on Marketplace, and it was, like yeah, I mean, I just don't talk about prices, but it doesn't matter. It was 27 grand is the guy put it
Wow.
up, and I was like, wow, like that's a lot of money. Like that's way more than I've ever spent on anything in my life, but it's also like about the cost of rebuilding just a motor for one of those,
Yeah, really.
or like it's like not a whole lot more. And the guy had receipts for like the 27 grand. So I was like, whoa, like
Wow.
since 1974 when he bought the car, he took it off the
Wow.
road in 75, put it in a garage. The Vancouver Islands are all surrounded by salt water, so like it showed that it was in a garage. It wasn't rusty.
Yeah.
And since 1975, he put 27 grand into like rebuilding brakes and like rebuilding motor, rebuilding transmission. He had a tiny bit of rust repair done. He had the car rewired, and then he started chroming everything. Like, and it's funny because like the chrome shop closed before they finished chroming, so there's like half of things are chromed. Like half of the grill is fresh chrome, and the other half is not.
Oh my
And I'm
gosh.
like, what is going on here? But anyway, the 27 grand, like I was still like, man, that's unobtainium. There's just no way. This is
Yeah.
during COVID, and then all of a sudden I saw it for 15, and I went, what is going on? Like, why are people not like running to go get this thing?
Yeah.
Um, and I just kind of like the whole time I just felt like it was sort of meant to be. I went over there with 2,000 bucks. That's all I had. I had 2 grand, and
Yeah.
I went over there and I was like, met the dude, and I like pre-typed up this contract that said that like this 2 grand is yours if I don't pay you in 6 weeks, basically.
No way.
And so like I went there, talked to the guy for like a couple hours, and we we were kind of friends and talking about this car, and then I gave him the contract. I said, look, man, like I know you're moving. I know you're trying to sell stuff so that you can move. Like he's a really old guy, and just a super nice guy. And he agreed to the contract. Long story short, he agreed to the contract, so I did a 4-door to 2-door conversion on a 55 Chevy I was building into a gasser, and that's what got me the car. Is I
Mm.
went home, and this is on YouTube too. I was like building this, 4-door to 2-door conversion 55 Chevy gasser, and I got it to the point where it was worth enough money that I could sell it to go buy this Zephyr. And that's how it happened, man. It was like it
No
was
way.
totally crazy. Like I just the whole time, every step of the way, I felt like it was meant to be. So
Hmm.
yeah, it kind of was, and that was that. Like, so I got the car, and that it's one of the most important cars to me right now, just because
That's amazing.
I've got a few projects, but like my 38 Dodge Rat Rod, that was the first car I ever kind of finished, and then this Zephyr is one that I knew I didn't have the skills at the time I bought it to do this conversion. Like the amount of true metal shaping that needs to happen to make a trunk lid from scratch, make the whole roof from scratch, catwalk, like all that stuff.
Yeah.
Those panels I was talking about on the side, like those really low crown panels, I struggled with those, and it shows in the video. I threw away 4 panels on the first side because
Really?
the first time I did it, I was like, it's such a low crown, like I could probably develop the shape and get it pretty close and like not make a buck for it.
Mhm.
And I was just chasing my tail. Couldn't put the panel on to actually see what it needed because it didn't have anything on the backside to like hold
Right.
it in arrangement.
Yeah.
So I learned that, and so I tried it again, and I went too much, and then I tried it again, and it was close, but like kind of messed up in one spot, so I like did it a 4th time, and the 4th time's like not 1,000% good, but it's, as I like to say, it's 100% good enough, like, like, and then the other side, I didn't throw away a panel, so like I'm like
Yeah.
learning as I go, so yeah, I try to pick projects that will push myself a little bit at the same
Mhm.
time. Yeah, and then like the side body line that I was talking about, also making that really long body line to kind of give it the right flow for the coupe versus the 4-door on the side. That was also like very new to me. I was like kind of struggling with like, man, without a pullmax, like how am I gonna make this perfect body line?
Mhm.
And I was like considering modifying the Sosa hammer, like the Shape-O-Matic, to have those dies. He's got like the
Yeah.
Maxo kit. We
Yeah.
couldn't get together on that, so I was like, man, what am I gonna do? So I ended up making bead roll dies for it, and then stretching the edge to let that piece curve, and it
Ah.
worked. And then a little later on, I did end up making I call it my garbage hammer. I like told myself like build a power hammer in one day with
Yeah.
crap you have, and that hammer did it also, like made that body line as well. So yeah, I
Talk
don't
about
know.
the process of you actually having to pre-stretch and to get that profile in the material, and then the tool that you built to do it. Talk about it.
Yeah, okay. So like the that body line of the Zephyr, it was about a 4-foot long body line, and I didn't really have to pre-stretch anything because it was basically just a formed, um, just a form. So
Mhm.
it was just straight, and then it kind of bumped up like this. So I did just put that in with a fence on my bead roller and just ran it totally straight. I think I might have had to like I custom cut the bead roll die, male and female, and then I just ran it against a fence totally straight until it was exactly what it needed to be. And then the top edge of that, to allow it to arc, I just went with a just a kick stretcher and kick
Mm.
stretched the top to get the arc to start, and then I kick shrunk the bottom a little bit to do the exact same thing. And what could be done, I suppose, with the reciprocating hammer, it's essentially like a pullmax that that I've built. It's very similar. It's just a fixed stroke reciprocating hammer. So I built a couple of dies that have set screws in them to allow you to clamp onto 2 pieces of plate, and those 2 pieces of plate then had that profile in them. I went ahead and like and made that as accurate as possible so that it had a nice profile and was polished, so it wasn't going to be marking anything.
Yeah.
And making dies like that, it is very important to have them extremely accurate. Like you could make a couple profiles and you could run a piece through and it'd be pretty close. But if at any point when you're tightening up those 2 male and female profiles, if they're too tight in one spot versus another, that spot is going to stretch and
Yeah.
it'll kind of contort whatever is happening. So that is like really important when you're making profile dies. But in the same way with that profile die on the garbage hammer or the pullmax, you could just run it straight directly through and do the same thing, kick and shrink and stretch the edges to create the curve, or you could potentially have say like a little piece of um, angled sheet metal as a guide and have that kick shrunk or kick stretched into an arc to follow
Right.
as you're running it through the machine, much like a pullmax. So like
Yeah.
there's so many ways to get different shapes depending on what you have at your disposal. Like if somebody doesn't have a pullmax, they can do this with a bead roller, you
Yeah.
know. And to make your own dies for the bead roller, maybe you don't have a lathe. Well, I've seen guys do it with a drill, man.
Drill.
like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like you told me before that we started the show that you use 20, what did you say, 25 cutting
Yep.
discs to cut
25 cutting wheels.
plates on your English wheel. Like,
That one right
so
there.
if
Yeah.
you don't have a torch, you can just beat yourself up with cutting wheels and
Oh
cut
my
plates
God.
into all kind of shapes. Like, so I really like to encourage people to, like, not give in to excuses when you're trying to learn metal shaping or metalwork, because there is always another way. Like, I was very much guilty of thinking that, like, oh man, like, I cannot do this without this very expensive machine,
Mm-hmm.
or this
Mm-hmm.
very expensive machine does this job easily. Why would I bother doing it any other way?
Yeah.
And that that's something I try and, like, show a lot on the channel, is like, and my best videos, like the ones that get like the most views, and this is like, this is evidence of it, are the ones where I struggle the most doing it by hand. So,
Yeah.
like, making you know, um, hand shaping tools, or like hand forming dies, or any kind of thing that takes me all damn day to get one part. Like, those are the things that people really want to know, because not everybody, I would say a majority of the people that watch the channel, or a majority of the people that are interested in metal shaping, they're going to be just like me. Like, they don't have insane amounts of money. Like, some of these guys out there have like $500,000 shops,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
pullmaxes, or they're 10
Mm-hmm.
grand, like,
Mm-hmm.
they're not cheap. So, like, for somebody to be discouraged because they don't have 10 grand for a pullmax, I want that person to, like, know that there's another way.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what I get out of the channel, is just hoping that other people will keep going with metal shaping, because they've got other options, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense. Not everybody
Yeah.
has. A lot of people are operating out of a 2-car garage, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes a 1-car garage, and it's
Built
like,
my first
if,
car, one car
yeah,
garage.
like if you
Not
get
even
that
built in
big,
the garage.
like that big 4-foot English wheel, every nice and deep, huge, great, but like that's half of your shop.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
not everybody has the space. The space.
Yeah.
Did you ever optimize? Like, were you working in a 2-car garage at one point and then you stepped up, or because you had moved recently?
Yeah, okay, so, like, for me, like, the way it happened, we'll rewind a little bit. So 2014, when I started Japhands Kustoms, I was working in Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona. I was there for about a year. We were filming this TV show. You guys can look it up. It's not very good. It's called Biker Battleground Phoenix. And so I was building motorcycles, did that for about 5 years, only in Phoenix for about a year for the show. But that's where I got to meet Christian. I got to meet, like, a lot of these bike building guys.
Yeah.
Jesse Rook. We actually ended up, RIP. But yeah, he was a good dude. He was a good friend down there. Anyway, I quit that and came home to get married and start Japhands Kustoms. And
Yeah.
so I started off in, like, a rat infested, like, 1,500 square foot shop next to a house that was also rat infested. Like, it was not good. We were there for a while, and then we tried to make it better, but it kept flooding. Like, the shop was just not good. Anyway,
Mm.
got out of there. We were trying to buy a house that fell through. Like, it is just this, like, cluster of BS. But during that time, I built like a 2,000 square foot shop on my parents' property. I went into debt for it. I was like, building this, like, the next workshop. And then I sold it to my brother to go get this house that never happened. And so, like, at the end of the day, it was like, oh, we had all these great plans, but then it's like, whoa, okay, nothing worked. And
Yeah.
we're now buying an RV and just gonna, like, put it on my parents' farm somewhere. So at
Yeah.
that time, fully, like, wasn't sure if I was gonna keep going with the shop. I rented half of the shop back off my brother, which is only 1,000 square feet. 1,000 square feet sounds like a lot, but but I had already like, acquired a bunch of equipment over
Yeah.
time. So, like, I had one car in the shop, and the rest was just, like, equipment and parts.
Mhm.
Couldn't take the hood off of a car and have a place to put it. Like, it was
Yeah.
so tight. And then again moved to the shop that we got shut down by the city, and then
Yeah.
moved here. So, like, it's been a little bit of a bump and go for me. But yeah, I mean, all things led to where we're at now, and it's all good. So
And you're still, the fact that you see it through just says like, hey, you know what? I'm a true fighter. I'm going to keep going with this and it's going to work. God damn it. It's going to work. And that's it.
yeah, I mean, that
Yeah.
it's a mindset thing, like, I think it was, yeah, when the shop got shut down by the city, and like I had like customers pull, and like I had a few employees at one time, and without those employees I wasn't able to you know, pay my wife at the time. Like she became full time, and so yeah, like things seemed like really, really bad.
Yeah.
And I remember it was like Christian, I was talking to him on the phone, and he was like, "Man, like how you doing? Like I know stuff's crazy right now." And I'm like, "Yeah, man." And what he told me was, he told me gains disguised as losses.
Hmm.
And I thought, man, that's like the shortest, simplest way of putting kind of everything into perspective. Is like, at the time when something crappy happens, you know, obviously it sucks. You feel like you're losing, right?
Hmm.
And but if at any point in your life you are happy and content with where you're at, all those things had to happen,
Yeah.
right? So like you're smiling today, you're happy, you're sitting in your shop, you got your microphone on, like we're having this great conversation.
Hmm.
I'm sure you've had all kinds of crap happen in your life up until now, but every bit of that was a part of your journey to get here now. So
Yeah.
just that kind of like it helped me out quite a bit at the time, and I just had it in my mind like, this is happening for a reason, this is happening for a reason. You know, it was like a few months of like not knowing what was going on, not knowing the future of the business. And in those few months YouTube started picking up a little bit, and I was feeling good about that. And then through social media somebody reached out and said, "Hey, like I hear you're looking for a shop, and this shop isn't ready yet, but it'll be ready in a couple months. Like, do you want to come have a look?" And turned out that it wasn't just a shop, it was this great property that had, you know,
Oh wow.
enough room for the dogs, and it had a nice, you know, little house. Like, little house, big shops, all I ever
Yeah.
wanted.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I'll clean a, you know, 3,000 square foot shop, no problem. But
Yeah.
if I gotta clean the house, you know,
Like,
you keep the square footage down.
it's not the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really cool story. I want to jump back to some panel making. Let's talk panel making.
Yeah. Good.
So if we go back to, let's say, your Zephyr for an example, and you had a really good video on how you made the wireframe or wireform for the door. Let's talk
Yeah.
a little bit about that and your thought process on how you did it, why you did it, and what made most sense.
Well, basically, like anytime trying to make a shape, this is also like the wire form is something that it's been around forever. Ferraris use them, you know,
Yeah.
to like coach builders have been using wire forms forever. Ray Chalene does a lot of wire forms. I learned mine in 2018 from Christian Sosa Metalworks. So he teaches that, you know, how important it is to have a wire form and a paper pattern for whatever shape you're making, because it literally is the roadmap as to the
Yeah.
shape that you're going to make. So the first time I attempted this quarter panel filler for the Zephyr, I thought, man, I could probably do it without a wire form. It's such a simple thing. It's really
Mm.
not. Like, it's almost harder to make a you know, a low crown compound curve than it is to make something with a high crown, just because with a high crown, like you're going to put so much work into it, you can't really mess it up right away. Like, you'll
Yeah.
mess it up later, you know. So like the low crown one, you just mess it up right away and it'll be over, because it didn't need much and you have to know exactly what it needs. So the wire form, what it does is it allows the panel to be in arrangement when you're checking to see what else it needs. So if you picture a panel going over top of a wire frame, and the wire frame is the exact, you know, backside of what the panel needs to be shape wise, and so you stick it on there, and you've got a floppy piece of metal, right? So if you didn't have that wire frame, it could be a little low in the center and it could be touching everywhere else. Well, you
Mhm.
wouldn't know that it's a little bit low in the center because it isn't in its arrangement. So to have a wire frame backing, wire frame, wood buck, like anything, foam, whatever you're going to do as your, I guess, starting point to make a shape,
Yeah.
that is absolutely ridiculously important. Like, without that, you wouldn't know what the panel needs next. So you put your piece on the wireframe, and because the center of that piece is a little bit low, well, it touches the wireframe first. So now you know, like, your edges are not touching because the center is already touching. Well, what does that mean? That means that that center needs a little bit more surface area to grow out and away from the wire form, and to allow the rest of the panel to sit down.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just one of the many things that is super important. Is just the process is, what one step is going to tell you for the next step. And yeah, having a wire form or a wood buck or a foam buck or anything that is the shape to arrange your panel as you're checking, it's incredibly important.
Any preference? You prefer the wire or do you prefer the wood?
I like the wire because I just hate wood. I mean, I don't know.
Like I can weld it,
In
man.
shop
Yeah.
class, it's like, are you going to do wood or are you going to do
Yeah.
metal? And it's like,
Yeah.
I'm going to do metal. So like wood can just, leave now. But
Yeah.
I honestly, I haven't done a whole lot of the wood frame stuff. I like the wire because I already have it. It's welding wire, basically. It's very manipulatable. It's very easy to use. I can definitely see a lot of places where wood would be advantageous over wire, especially
Mm-hmm.
if it was like a repeated panel. Like say you were gonna do, you know, 10 roof inserts for a 34 Ford. You would probably want a wood one because you're gonna make 10 of them, and wood isn't gonna change at all. You couldn't drop it on the ground and have it bend, that kind of thing. But I like the wire a lot because if you could, especially if you can see the backside, you can look and you can see the edge of the
Mm-hmm.
wire and you can see
Yeah.
exactly how far away it is from your material.
Yeah.
You can check your progress really easily. So I like it that way because it's more of like an on the fly thing that you can do without much time, you know.
Yeah.
But the wood is amazing. Like I wouldn't wireframe in a whole car like the bucks that Aiden uses on his on his Speedster or whatever, the boat tail project. Seeing that as a wireframe, that would be way too much work. You'd be there forever, and it wouldn't make any sense to make that out of wire unless you were without CNC capabilities,
Right.
and you were without, like, you could certainly do it just like just like beating with a stump and not using a power hammer. But I think efficiency wise, the wire is great for on the fly, and efficiency wise, the wood is great for repeatability, or or being able to use CAD software to create a buck to make a car.
Yeah. That is a benefit for sure. Being able to be like,
Yeah.
"Bloop, yep, I'm looking for this piece or this car. Oh yeah, we can just cut this out and bang." After a couple days of milling, you have yourself a full buck that you just slide together, right? It's
Right,
kind of cool.
exactly. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's too cool. I'm sure Aiden talked about it. I haven't watched his podcast with you yet. I don't you posted it already, right?
It hasn't been posted yet.
Oh, it hasn't been posted
No.
yet. Okay,
No.
that's
So
why I
you're
haven't
still
watched it.
safe. You're still good.
Okay, we're
Yeah.
still safe. So I don't know if he covered it or not, but when he makes a car, it's really neat because he's an artist, right? He's making something that didn't exist. He's conceptualizing, a design that he's come up with in his head. So this Rolls Royce that he's doing right now, and the Auburn itself, he will shape one side of the car
Hmm.
completely and then have that scanned and
Yeah.
then make the buck, which I think is cool. So he'll wireframe because it's on the fly and it's something as you're designing, you can work with it and interact with it. And so he'll make the whole side of a car, half of the car split down the center, and then realize like some shapes work and some shapes don't. Like when I was there making a small panel on that Rolls Royce, and I was trying to make it like directly to his wire as close as possible,
Yeah.
and fine tuning it until it was like just mint. But by the time that whole car was built on the side quarter and the side fender of that car,
Mhm.
like I could see by his post that the shapes did change. He wasn't
Mm.
working the same shape that he originally did with the wire, and the reason is that the metal flowed nicer in a different
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah.
So it has like a little bit of play. You can play with it, right? So
Yeah.
then once he finishes the whole side of a car, then you can 3D scan that, have
So weird.
that.
Oh,
Yeah, it's sweet. Like,
wow.
look at our technology. 3D scanned, and then boom, buck's built. Like, you
Yeah.
can make a buck from 3D scanned to mirror the other side. And I just thought that was like just super interesting, the fact that you can do it that way.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, every buck has its place, and I don't see any of them becoming obsolete.
No doubt. What about patch panels? So when you're doing your restorations, how is patch panel and hot rod building different than full on coach building? How do they change?
I think that I mean, like patch panel hot rod building, usually you have a little bit of information there already. So you kind of don't
Yeah.
really have to create a buck because you know what it looked like. It's just some of it's missing now. You know?
Little
So
Swiss
like you
cheese
could,
in there. Yeah.
yeah, there's some Swiss cheese in there. So like and a lot of the times it's a little bit flatter panels, especially like rockers and the bottoms of fenders and stuff like that. Like I don't make bucks for that stuff
Yeah.
because I don't believe that it really needs to be there really needs to be a buck unless it's completely gone. And even in that case, sometimes you can go to the other side and take a tape pattern off of the other side, flip it upside down, and now you've got where you need to be.
Mm.
So yeah, there's definitely a big difference in coach building versus like just repairing rust. I'm sure you could take it to that level. Like you can certainly make rust repairs quick and dirty, or you can make rust repairs that are directly identical. I personally like the challenge of trying to make something directly identical. Like, you know, if you I was doing like the bottoms of the Cadillac fenders and there were like inner braces that could have just been flat metal with like a lip on it. But
Yeah.
from the factory they had like a little bit of a thing in there and so I'll make like a die for the air hammer that presses that in or I have fun doing that kind of stuff and I like showing people that you can do it all with simple shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for the most part, coach building and or coach building and rust repair are very different because usually with coach building, you're making things that don't exist that, you know, are usually a lot larger panels and a lot bigger shapes and a lot, you know, part of something larger, you know. But the rust repair stuff is just as challenging as fun, you know, to me anyway, is as long as you're trying to make it look original, you know.
Is this where a lot of the tools, like you're building the Mother Tucker hammer and you're doing some courses and stuff like that? Is this where a lot of this was born from, like, just going out there, doing it and saying, hey, this is what works. I'm going to share it.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was like a like part and parcel. Like I think that a lot of the course stuff is has started growing because yeah, I did a couple with Christian last year, and then
Yeah.
we did a few this year, and they were very well received, and people enjoyed it. And what I'm trying to do now is kind of find my own niche as far as that. Like he's got this great course where we build a motorcycle gas tank in a few days, and like you get so much from it because you get all the different steps.
Yeah.
But also some people were asking for more hand metal shaping stuff because not everybody has a power hammer. You know, like his Shape-O-Matic power hammer, I bought that before I even messed around with doing it by hand, to be honest, because
Nice.
it was
Nice.
such a good price point that I was kind of like, why? Why would you even hurt your arm? You
You're just
know, like,
smashing away. You're like, oh my gosh.
yeah,
Yeah.
like most bang for your buck, I feel like his hammer's the way to go because if you're pursuing metal shaping, you probably can weld together a frame for a
Yeah.
power hammer. Like it's relatively simple. So yeah, like I know we're straying away from the question a bit, but yeah, like the whole class thing, it's for me now, my I guess niche in that market is going to try and be more of the hand metal shaping stuff just
Mhm.
because I believe that so much can be done and I've learned a lot recently about how much shape can really be done and how translatable it is to people that are building patch panels as well with
Yeah.
very simple tools, you know. So yeah, like I think when I do my courses at the shop here. So far, I've only done courses in other people's shops. You know, I did a couple in
Mm.
Australia. I did one in Manitoba a couple weeks ago, and then I've done quite a few in Vegas. And we're going to start those ones up again as well. But I'm going to have them here at my shop and try and teach a little bit more hand stuff. So like
Yeah.
we're going to do practical, hands-on like we're going to make this patch panel for a fender because to be honest most people I would say 9 out of 10 people they're not coach
Yeah.
building at home or aspiring to coach build, they're usually fixing an old car,
Hmm.
right? Something that's got some rust. So how are you going to do your bead rolls, how are you going to do your fender bottoms, how are you going to do your rocker panels, how are you going to bend flanges, curved flanges, that kind of thing. So I think that that will sort of be where I focus my classes, um, because I think most of my audience, as well as what I'm most in tune with, is rust repair. You know,
Yeah.
like nobody really loves it, but it's something that is necessary for restoring any old car. So it's kind of like necessity, even if you don't love doing it. And it's also super expensive. Like you're gonna pay somebody to do rust repair, like you're gonna spend a lot of money. So learning how to do it yourself will be pretty advantageous. And the other thing is, recently I was in Australia, and I found it very interesting that because they don't have a very good parts supply, number one, all the cars that were manufactured there for Australia are kind of only in Australia. So just by sheer numbers of people, like per capita, like they're not lucratively producing mass production replacement parts for these cars, like old Holdens.
Economy of the scale. Us here in North
Yeah,
America, Canada, US, you need a part, you go get a part. No big deal. That's why we're a
exactly.
throwaway society, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So like because of that, it's very different over there. Everybody who's building a car, they are learning how to do it themselves because for more than just the reasons that you can't buy patch panels. It's like you can't buy patch panels, or you could, but you'd pay to have them shipped over there, and it'd be kind of ridiculous if they were American cars, because there's a lot of American cars getting built there as well.
Yeah.
But everything is so expensive, man. Like you get somebody to just basically restore a car out there, and I'm sure it's about 40% more expensive than having one done here, and it's getting expensive here as well. So everybody over there is learning how to do it themselves, and to a higher level than people are here. And like it's really interesting, man, because like they also have engineering over there, which is something we don't have to do. We get away with a lot of sin building cars here because technically you're not supposed to weld on anything suspension. Technically, you're not supposed to have any part that's not DOT. Technically, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But over there, they mean it. Like, like you want to change your front clip on the car? Cool. All right. Hey, engineer, can you come over here and approve the parts that I'm going to use to change this front clip? Sweet. Signed off. Okay, I have these pieces tacked in. You have to come back. Signed off again. Okay, now I've welded them. Now you get to sign off again. Oh, you want to change your steering column? What's the distance between your chest and the steering column? How much collapse do you have in your steering column? Like what? It's ridiculous. Like, and because of that, people need to be better.
Yeah, no
And so
doubt.
there's no rat rods on the road in Australia. There's none. Like there's no rat rods anywhere. If you see a car that is rat rod-esque, chances are it is like a $200,000 rat rod-esque car because it's like fully
It's
engineered.
been painted to look that way. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the other end of that is that they can also have full-on ridiculous race cars on the road legally. So
Like,
like I
hey,
saw cars
it's
there that were
engineered.
like,
Hey,
yeah,
what's
it's
up?
engineered, right? Like oh yeah, they have literal mathematical equations for how much horsepower you have to how much braking you must have.
Oh
They
wow,
calculate that stuff.
really?
They actually do. So like there's cars there that will have a phone book of engineering. It's a
Wow.
2,500 horsepower car that's just jacked up and worth $1 million and whatever. And it is like no cop can say that thing is not allowed on the road.
Wow.
Capable of doing 250 miles an hour. Like the cop
Man.
can't say anything. So
Man. That's
it's
why we've
different.
really come full circle with this. We've gone from sheet metal to all around the globe to back and forth and shop ownership and
Yeah, you
all
got to
this
be
stuff. I
careful,
mean,
man. I'll just keep talking.
you're so like you're such a genuine individual. And from the people that I've spoken with, and just from like the hour that we've 48 minutes that we've spent together here, I mean, it just shows through your character and your kindness and your sincerity. Other people that I've spoken with in the industry, they all say the same thing. Oh, you got Karl coming on the show? He's such a nice guy. That guy's great. He's always willing to help, and I believe that, and I believed it before, and I believe it even more so now. So from one fellow Canadian to the other, thank you so much for being on the show today. Where can people find out more about you?
Well, thanks a lot, Ryan. I really appreciate you as well. And it's been a blast being on the show with you this morning. You can check me out on Instagram, Japhands Kustoms, YouTube, Makeitkustom, custom with a K, and the website's japhandskustoms.com if you're interested in anything else. So thanks a lot.
Excellent. Well, for the viewers, don't forget to like, share, follow, and subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode.
All right. Cheers, guys. Thanks a lot, Ryan.